Sajo hurries down the street, calling for Aika to wait. Annoyed, Aika orders him to stay away because he is being incredibly bothersome. When Sajo protests her bluntness, Aika counters that his persistent behavior leaves her no choice. Sajo wonders if he truly annoys her that much. Aika confirms it and demands he stop immediately. When he claims he can't, Aika declares she can no longer tolerate this dynamic. Suddenly, a football flies out of nowhere, narrowly missing Sajo's face and leaving him in shock as it zooms past. Sajo reflects on his life as an ordinary high schooler known on campus mostly as a persistent stalker. To him, Aika is a beautiful goddess, and his massive crush drives him to approach her passionately every single day. However, the near miss with the football triggers a psychological shift inside him. Seeing him dazed, Aika briefly drops her irritation to ask if he is okay. Sajo quietly confirms he is fine. Aika quickly recovers her cold demeanor, warning him that this danger is exactly what happens when he stalks her. She tells him never to approach her again and walks away. Instead of fighting back, Sajo quietly agrees and resolves to step away. In the classroom, Aika is chatting with her friend Kei when Sajo walks in. Kei greets him, but Sajo gives a muted response. Kei jokes that his near miss was divine punishment for his daily misbehavior, and Sajo calmly agrees. Though Aika tries to drop the subject, Kei warns Sajo that Aika will only dislike him more if he keeps this up. Sajo surprises them both by agreeing completely. Stunned by his submissive attitude, Kei asks if he has a fever. He denies it, leaving her bewildered until the teacher enters and orders everyone to their seats, even remarking on Sajo's unusual quietness. During recess, Sajo encounters Aika in the hallway. She assumes he is stalking her again, but he clarifies he is just heading to the restroom. Inside, male classmates corner him to ask if they fought. When Sajo notes that arguing is normal for them, they point out that he usually pesters her regardless of her anger. Sajo admits his mindset has changed, suddenly asking if it genuinely looks like he loves Aika. The boys find the question ridiculous, noting his obvious infatuation. Sajo agrees, explaining he loves her so much he just wants to support her from afar. At lunchtime, Sajo leaves his desk. Aika nervously speaks up from her adjacent seat, but gets flustered and claims he misheard when he asks if she called. When she demands to know where he is going, Sajo explains he is just heading to the cafeteria. Nearby students are shocked by his restraint, whispering about how he usually makes a massive scene trying to share her lunch. Embarrassed, Aika tells him to leave before time runs out, and Sajo quietly complies. Eating lunch alone in an isolated spot, Sajo questions his own feelings when a girl approaches, addressing him by name. She introduces herself as Rina from the neighboring class. When Sajo asks why she sought him out, Rina playfully tells him to guess. Finding the game annoying, Sajo calls her a pain, prompting Rina to comment on his harshness before leaving. Later, a classmate tells Sajo a female visitor is waiting for him. Rina appears at the door. Sajo notes his shock that a cute girl is seeking him out, which infuriates his classmate, who accuses Sajo of flirting around while pursuing Aika. Just then, Kei and Aika enter, creating instant tension. Aika acts cold towards Sajo and leaves to fulfill her duties as class helper, accompanied by Kei. Left alone with Sajo, Rina worries she gave Aika the wrong impression. After PE class, Kei corners Sajo, calling him a cheating womanizer for looking at other girls. Sajo is confused, but Kei points out his interactions with Rina, revealing that Rina is deeply devoted to a second-year boyfriend she has dated since middle school. Back in the classroom, Kei finds Sajo lost in thought. She accuses him of being preoccupied with Rina. Sajo admits it and prepares to ask a question, but Rina enters to chat. Kei steps in aggressively, demanding Rina explain why she broke up with her boyfriend. Stunned that Kei knows, Rina grows defensive. Aika tries to restrain Kei, but Kei dismisses her, claiming Rina is targeting Sajo. Rina admits the breakup happened because of her own bad personality traits. Kei, however, insults the ex-boyfriend, claiming Rina is better off with Sajo. When Aika yells at her to stop, Kei doubles down, calling the ex awful for discarding her. Deeply hurt, Rina begs Kei to stop bad-mouthing him and runs off. Sajo rushes after Rina, accidentally colliding with a shy girl carrying papers. He apologizes, but the girl runs off. Tracking Rina down, Sajo apologizes for Kei's insensitivity. Rina questions why he's apologizing for someone else. She notes that Sajo never mentions Aika around her, and he explains past experiences taught him not to discuss other girls with a female companion. Rina calls him an experienced romantic, though Sajo admits he's never succeeded in love. When Rina notes everyone knows he loves Aika, Sajo concedes but admits his heart has cooled after so many rejections. He asks about Rina's romance, and Rina opens up. Her boyfriend mentioned Aika was his type, prompting her to break up with him. Though she knew it wasn't a deep declaration, she found it unacceptable and tried to use Sajo to make her ex jealous. Sajo sympathizes and shares a middle school story about being rejected by a girl who insulted his looks, whose boyfriend then tried to hit him. As he flew backward, he rammed face first into Aika's chest. Rina is shocked, and Sajo adds that Aika immediately screamed and slapped him. When Rina asks why that made him fall for her, Sajo explains Aika then defended him, angrily telling the bullies that mocking someone's genuine feelings is terrible behavior. Rina finds the story moving, but Sajo reveals he made it up. Bewildered, Rina listens as Sajo clarifies that while that specific event didn't happen, Aika is exactly that virtuous. It began as love at first sight, but he became serious because of her kindness when she first extended a hand to help him. Sajo declares he is essentially an Aika fan, viewing her as a goddess and choosing to support her from afar. Rina reminds him he wanted to date her, but Sajo explains continuing would make him a nuisance. He resolves to quietly wish for her happiness as a rejected admirer. Rina admits his perspective cheered her up. She declines his offer to scold Kei, realizing Kei was just protecting Aika. She promises no more trouble, concluding with a sigh that all men have flaws. A few days later, Kei and Aika spot Rina and her boyfriend reunited down the street. Kei expresses pity for Sajo, noting he was turned down by both girls in short order, and Aika quietly agrees. At school, Sajo tells Kei his time with Rina was a pleasant dream. When Kei asks if he's satisfied with just memories, Sajo admits he knew Rina had ulterior motives, but decided to enjoy her company anyway, calling a girl like Rina a man's ideal landscape. Overhearing, Aika asks if he's truly comfortable with that. Sajo explains that since he is already heavily disliked, he never expected anything positive. Kei observes that Sajo seems stranger than usual, but he responds that his past behavior was the true abnormality. Classmates join in, mocking Sajo's gloomy expression and asking if Aika finally broke his heart. Sajo jokes that they are undergoing divorce proceedings, shocking Aika. Later, Sajo stares into a mirror, recalling his attempts to ask Aika out and calling himself a fool for chasing someone out of his league. Suddenly, Aika arrives at his house. Stunned, Sajo invites her in and asks how she got his address. She explains some club boys gave her directions. Sajo notes she must have an important reason to visit, awkwardly mentioning no one else is home. Aika gasps, but accepts his quick clarification that he meant nothing inappropriate. Without their knowledge, his older sister Kaide arrives and listens from the hallway. Aika asks Sajo if something happened, clarifying that while he's normally weird, his current rational behavior feels truly bizarre. She vents that he used to be unfazed by rejection, confessing that his sudden lack of attention feels unsettling. Sajo looks at her and directly asks her to go out with him. Aika reacts with shock, stating there's no way she'd agree given the bizarre timing. Sajo calmly notes he already knew she'd say no. He explains that relentlessly pursuing someone who rejects you is creepy through a normal lens. Before he can finish explaining his sudden realization, Kaide bursts into the room. She pretends to notice Aika for the first time, excitedly asking if she is Sajo's girlfriend. Sajo denies it, explaining it's just business, and offers to walk Aika home. Kaide mocks his gentlemanly attitude. Aika recognizes Kaide, asking if she's on the student council. Kaide confirms she's the vice president, but calls it a major hassle. Walking Aika home, Sajo apologizes for his sister. Aika then asks what Sajo was going to say before the interruption. Sajo explains that since he harassed her in the past, he wants to clarify that he will no longer follow her around, looking forward to being regular classmates. Struck by his distant tone, Aika is further stunned when Sajo asks if she knows any friends who might be a good romantic match for him. Upset, Aika feints to hit him, but she then runs down the street crying that he sucks. The next day, a seating shift places Kei directly behind Sajo. She teases him about being separated from Aika, but Sajo notes the distance ensures he won't bother her anymore. He explains it was high time to move on. Kei accepts this, but says he must take responsibility for his past actions. Because he always hovered around Aika, other classmates felt unable to approach her. Sayo looks across the room and notices Aika sitting completely isolated. Realizing the truth of Kei's words, he resolves to dedicate himself to supporting Aika from afar. When the break arrives, Kei sneaks up and hugs Aika from behind, complaining that she feels lonely ever since the new seating arrangement separated them. Aika gets flustered by the sudden physical contact, telling her friend to relax. Watching from across the room, Sajo notes that he rarely sees Aika acting so friendly with anyone else. Realizing his absence allows her to naturally interact with others, He decides this sudden distance is for the best. Sajo leaves the classroom and wanders down the hallway, lost in thought. He reasons that from Aika's perspective, she tolerated his presence in the past simply to avoid total isolation. Suddenly, a girl named Rin stands in front of him. She confronts him directly, asking if he is the one who frightened her junior committee member the other day. Sajo recalls the timid girl he bumped into, owns up to the mistake, and offers a sincere apology. Rin questions why he feels the need to apologize so deeply, asking if he possessed any malicious intent when he spoke to her. Sajo counters that regardless of intent, the factual result is that he caused her fright. Rin points out that despite her youthful looks, that innocent girl is actually his upperclassman. She adds that under normal circumstances, his willingness to help someone struggling with a heavy load is an action that deserves praise. Sajo is relieved to hear this, but apologizes once more before trying to excuse himself. Rin commands him to wait. Addressing her by name, Sajo asks what she wants. Rin is surprised he knows her identity, but Sajo explains that everyone recognizes the charismatic chairperson of the school committee for morals and discipline. Rin admits that must be how the general student body views her. Changing the subject, she notes Sajo has an incredibly low opinion of himself, explaining that the girl's defensive attitude stems from an insecurity around male students. She guides him to the student guidance room to talk properly. Rin explains she is convinced he held no ulterior motives, noting he does not appear to be the pretentious type. Rin shares that the girl is Yu, describing her as a hardworking committee member. She explains that while the members take pride in their duties, they frequently lose self-confidence and spiral into pessimism. Sajo points out that observing such a flawless upperclassman naturally creates feelings of inadequacy. Rin blushes, telling him not to praise her so heavily. Sajo asks if she is simply worried about her junior. Rin confesses that her own perfection might be the root of the problem. When she tries to encourage her teammates, they always dismiss it, saying she can handle things easily because she is the exceptional chairperson. Sajo notes that the teammates are essentially saying she could never comprehend their actual struggles. Sajo explains that ordinary students are not looking for a perfect upperclassman to give them profound encouragement. Rin is stunned, asking what she should do instead. Sajo advises her to simply tell them not to let it get to them and follow it up with a firm pat on the back. They do not want her to lower her standards to sympathize. They want her to keep leading and pulling them forward. Rin contemplates his words, finally understanding the situation. As they leave the room, Rin apologizes for taking up his entire break. Sajo dismisses the concern, bidding her farewell. Rin stops him, realizing she hasn't asked for his name. Sajo quickly lies, telling her his name is Yamazaki. The following morning, Kei rushes towards Sajo in a panic, screaming that the legendary Rin is completely furious. Sajo spots Rin waiting in his classroom. Sensing trouble, he tells Kei to go inside without him. However, Rin spots him immediately and steps forward. Sajo nervously greets her, but Rin immediately exposes his lie, addressing him as the self-professed Yamazaki whose actual name is Sajo. Rin firmly commands him to meet her in the student guidance room during lunch break. Aika watches the confrontation in deep confusion, asking Sajo what on earth he did to get involved with the committee. Before he can answer, the real Yamazaki calls Sajo a bastard, demanding to know why he used his name without permission. Sajo notes that Yamazaki should be thrilled a beautiful girl called out his name, and Yamazaki awkwardly concedes. At lunch break, Sajo reports directly to the student guidance room. Rin asks if he intends to apologize for his deception. Sajo counters that he regrets causing her to miss lunch the other day, offering one of 2 chocolate pies he bought to make amends. Rin accepts the treat, but demands to know why he lied. Sajo explains that having his name remembered by the head of the committee would only bring complications. Rin admits his blunt reasoning hurts her feelings, pointing out that he offloaded his troubles onto an innocent classmate. Sajo reassures her that Yamazaki was delighted. Rin cannot understand why one student dislikes her attention while another is thrilled. Sajo notes that Yu seems to understand the logic. Yu panics, stammering nervously. Rin steps in, telling Sajo to stop frightening her junior. Yu finds her courage, explaining that Yamazaki was likely delighted because Rin is incredibly beautiful. Rin blushes, telling Yu to stop saying embarrassing things, but Yu insists it is the truth. Rin quickly changes the subject, telling Sajo that falsifying his name is a bad habit, and instructs him to be careful. Rin then clarifies that the main topic is separate. Yu has been anxious about rejecting his kindness during their first encounter, and wanted to formally apologize and thank him. Yu then thanks him for calling out to help when she was struggling with a heavy load. She declares she will use this experience to conquer her insecurity around men, promising to do her best. Sajo wishes her luck before making a swift exit. Back in the classroom, Kei directs Sajo's attention across the room, where Aika is happily surrounded by classmates. Sajo watches with a proud smile. Kei teases him for looking exactly like a proud father, asking if he will join them. Sajo declines, stating it is better if he stays away. He reflects on the scene, realizing his overbearing presence was the main obstacle keeping her isolated all this time. Suddenly, his phone vibrates with a message from Katie. After school, Sajo heads to the student council room, grumbling about his sister behaving like a demanding boyfriend. He enters and asks what she requires. Kaidi explains that the summer school visit tour requires an overwhelming amount of material gathering, leaving the staff completely overwhelmed. She demands his assistance, stating they will take any help they can get. Sajo scoffs at being relegated to basic labor, but Kaida counters that he is exceptional at administrative tasks. She blackmails him, reminding him that she kept quiet about him lying about his age for a part-time job, leaving him no choice but to work. Sajo asks if she will summon him tomorrow, and Kaidi confirms it, promising an adult magazine as compensation. Sajo clears his throat before admitting he might consider it. Kaidi calls him disgusting and orders him to meet her at exactly 7 a.m. The next day, a cheerful group of girls surrounds Aika, asking to hang out at her house to see her adorable little sister. Kei excitedly tags along too. Aika happily grants them permission, and the girls immediately plan to buy cake from the shop by the station. Sajo then walks in, and Kei informs him of the trip. Sajo responds that his personal level is too low for such a space. A classmate laughs, pointing out her house isn't a dangerous dungeon. Sajo looks at Aika and asks if it is truly all right for a large group to invade her home. Aika glares back, declaring she will never allow her sister Airi near him. Sajo nods, stating he expected as much, leaving Aika looking stunned by his easy compliance. After class, Aika tracks Sajo down in the hallway, nervously trying to invite him to her house after all. Before she can finish, Rin appears and calls out to Sajo. Rin asks Aika if she can borrow Sajo for a moment, adding she can wait if they were in the middle of a conversation. Aika quickly panics, insisting everything is fine, and steps aside to let Rin take him away. Inside the student guidance room, Sajo asks Rin what she wants to discuss. Rin offers her sincere gratitude, explaining that her advice successfully helped support Yu. However, Rin explains a separate issue has arisen. Yu is depressed because she believes she failed to make Sajo understand her true feelings. Rin then demands his unfiltered opinion about that. Sajo confesses he was simply disappointed by Yu's naively shallow resolve. He explains that Yu didn't apologize just for his benefit. She was merely frustrated with herself for letting her defensive panic reject pure kindness. Rin asks if he is genuinely dissatisfied. Sajo clarifies that he praises her desire to overcome her flaws, but her words implied she was merely using the incident as a convenient stepping stone. Rin asks if that is inherently bad. Sajo points out that if she had independent resolve, she shouldn't have brought Rin along, as Rin's presence grants her an artificial shield of courage. Rin remarks that Sajo is incredibly unsparing, but also praises him for being very perceptive. Sajo explains his ability exists because up until recently, the only thing he focused on was understanding one single person, and he has simply stopped doing that. The story then shifts to the lively gathering inside Aika's home later that day. The visiting classmates crowd around the dining table presenting cakes to Eri, telling her to choose whichever she likes best. Aika gently intervenes, reminding her sister that guests choose first. Eri happily agrees with a bright smile, causing the surrounding students to gush over how adorable she is. The next school day begins with the arrival of summer heat. Sajo walks to school, reflecting on how he can easily do without the crazy weather, though he admits he still wishes Aika were by his side. Upon entering his classroom, Kei pops up right in front of him, wearing her new summer uniform. Sajo flinches and asks her not to jump out in such scanty clothing because it is bad for his heart. Kei calls him a pervert for describing a standard summer uniform that way, and then teasingly asks if he is fine with not staring at a certain someone's summer outfit, making Sajo realize that Aika is also wearing her summer uniform today. Once class concludes, Kei approaches Sajo's desk and asks why he has not spoken a single word to Aika all day. Sajo explains that the distance between their assigned seats makes it completely normal, adding that Aika is frequently surrounded by others now, and he does not want to get in her way. When Kei questions if he is truly comfortable standing aside, Sajo reasons that keeping his distance is best for Aika because interacting with her like before might ruin her new social environment. Kei remains doubtful, but Sajo jokingly adds that keeping his distance gives him a full view of Aika in her summer uniform. Kei calls him a total lecher and tells him to stop, though Sajo insists that Aika is simply too cute. Later, during PE, Sajo plays football outside when a male classmate approaches him to compliment the soccer club's great performance. At that moment, Sajo receives a text message from Kaede stating that she does not need him today. The classmate remarks on how matter-of-fact Sajo's family seems, and Sajo explains that Kaede is never the meddling type, though he notes it is unusual that they have not spoken since the weekend. Back in the classroom, Yamazaki jumps out to greet Sajo, prompting Sajo to compare him to a wild creature. Yamazaki claims he is actually unexcited because the new seating arrangement is cruel, though he mentions being glad to get to know Koga. Sajo expresses surprise, while Koga, sitting nearby with her friends, loudly boasts that she plans to do it with her new boyfriend soon. Noticing that Sajo is about to eat lunch alone, Yamazaki invites him to join their group, calling out to Koga that Sajo is coming along. A flustered Sajo sits down as Koga teases him about wanting to join them. Koga's female friends comment on how quiet Sajo has been lately, asking if he has become an introvert. Sajo agrees, pointing to his assigned seat in the very front corner, which makes the girls laugh. Koga then asks what is going on between him and Aika, noting that everyone misses their usual marital squabbles. She bluntly asks if they have already done it, given their long history since middle school. Sajo tells them not to be silly, pointing out that he does not even know where Aika lives. The girls mock him for failing as a husband, and Koga wonders if he just lacks attractiveness, with Yamazaki chiming in that Sajo is ordinary in many ways, including his face. The girls then ask Sajo about the brown-haired girl from before, inquiring if he did anything with Aizawa. Sajo corrects their misunderstanding, explaining that Aizawa has been completely devoted to a specific upperclassman since enrolling. Before Sajo can finish his sentence, Aika suddenly interrupts by calling his name. Sajo turns around in surprise, and an irritated Aika commands him to follow her, grabbing his arm forcefully. Sajo protests as she drags him out, while Koga's group finds the sudden turn of events hilarious. Aika drags Sajo down the hallway into the empty music room. Internally, Sajo wonders why she is so furious, trying to recall every possible mistake he might have made. He begs her to calm down and asks for a hint about the main thing bothering her so he can apologize properly. Tearing up with frustration, Aika admits she is angry because he was talking to those girls. When Sajo asks if she means Koga and her group, Aika confirms it. Realizing what her words imply, Sajo stares at her, but a flustered Aika quickly backtracks, warning him not to take it the wrong way. Sajo responds that he knows it is not like that, which is why he remains confused. Overwhelmed with embarrassment, Aika cuts him off, says to forget it, and runs out of the room. Sajo calls after her, utterly struck by how cute she was. As Sajo returns to his seat, a male student council officer approaches his desk and asks if he can step outside for a moment. Sajo agrees, noting that he only needs to head home after this anyway. They walk to the student council room, where the officer apologizes for the sudden interruption. Sajo asks if he needs help with council work again, but the officer clarifies that this is about something personal. He asks Sajo for his self-evaluation, and Sajo describes himself as an ordinary commoner. The officer notes that Sajo harbored a crush on one girl for many years and asks why he stopped. Sajo replies that there is no reason to discuss it. The officer points out that Sajo has changed recently, and Sajo explains that he simply stopped doing uncalled-for things. The officer then asks if Kaede knows about this, and Sajo acts surprised, questioning why his sister would care. Realizing Sajo has not spoken to her, the officer reveals that Kaede is deeply troubled and bewildered by Sayo's sudden change. Sajo scoffs, describing Kaede as cold-blooded and recalling how she usually demands expensive ice cream from him. However, the officer reveals that Kaede blames herself for Sajo's transformation, worrying that she destroyed her little brother's precious springtime of youth. Sajo is stunned. The officer asks if Kaede had not told him since childhood that he was just a certain level of a person, and Sajo admits she did. The officer explains that Kaede feels guilty and was seen weekly complaining about her worries for the very first time. Realizing the officer is completely serious, Sajo agrees to address the situation since it involves his family. When the officer mentions that a meeting place has already been arranged, Sajo is taken aback, noting that family matters can usually be handled at home. Sajo then arrives at the school terrace and finds Kaede waiting alone. Kaede is surprised to see him and asks why he is there. Sajo explains he was summoned and reveals that the student council chair's presence was just a white lie arranged by the officer. Sajo directly mentions hearing that Kaede is depressed, which she flusteredly denies. To test her state of mind, Sajo challenges her to list 10 good traits about him within 10 seconds. Kaede panics as Sajo counts down, failing to name good qualities. Sajo then asks her to list 10 ordinary traits instead. In a panic, Kaede blurts out 10 mundane aspects. Sajo then points out that she listed 10 traits so easily because deep down she really views him as an ordinary guy. However, he reassures her that she simply taught him reality, explaining that his recent change was his own choice after cooling off from his passion. Kaede reveals her fear, explaining that she once saw someone claim to give up on a crush while secretly holding on, leading to an emotional breakdown, and she feared Sajo would suffer the same fate because of her harsh words. She urges him to have confidence, stating that giving up on a long-time love is a shame, and promising to stop making fun of him or being unreasonable. However, Sajo cuts her off, rejecting her sudden attempt to act like a kind, gentle older sister. He passionately explains that he never wanted a flawless sister. He reminds her of her real self, a bossy sister who makes him run errands without thanks, lounges on the couch like she owns the place, and complains while eating steamed pork buns. Sajo declares that this imperfect, audacious sister is the one he likes best, and her sudden attempts to be mindful are just annoying. Stunned, Kaede asks if he is sure, noting this might be his last chance for her to be kind, but Sajo tells her to just be normal. Suddenly, the terrace doors burst open as Aika and Kei intrude on the scene. Aika furiously scolds Sajo for speaking to his older sister so rudely, demanding that he apologize immediately because his sister will be sad. Kei tries to restrain Aika, while Sajo freezes in total embarrassment, asking if they were spying on them. Kei claims they only caught the last part of the conversation, though Sajo remains suspicious. Sajo asks Aika why she came all the way to the rooftop in the first place. Aika stammers, realizing she instinctively followed him after seeing him taken away by the student council officer. Embarrassed, she claims it was purely a coincidence and quickly storms off. Sajo feels left behind once again, while Kaede softly chuckles, realizing her worries were unnecessary, and returns to her usual blunt self by calling Wataru stupid. After that, the focus shifts to a quiet cafe where Aika and Kei share drinks later that night. Kei gently tells Aika that she rushed headlong into things far too much during the day. Aika apologizes softly, admitting she does not completely understand her own actions either. She mentions how everyone visited her house recently and how her little sister Eri quickly warmed up to Sasaki and the others. When Kei teasingly asks if Eri is not allowed to warm up to their classmates, Aika stammers in response. Kei quickly realizes the truth, noting that Aika simply disliked seeing Eri warm up to other people before a certain someone else. Kei points out that Sajo has stopped making passes at Aika lately, leaving her feeling confused and frustrated. Aika admits this is true, though she still cannot comprehend why she feels so conflicted. Kei suggests that Sajo has likely become a place where Aika feels she belongs. Aika immediately denies it, insisting he is just an annoying stalker, but Kei points out how comforting it is to have someone who genuinely likes her, adding that anyone would feel uneasy after losing such a familiar presence. Aika marvels at Kei's deep insight, and Kei affectionately praises Aika's cute, awkward side. Shifting back to a serious tone, Kei warns her that Sajo might not stay around forever, reminding Aika that Sajo has always voiced his feelings daily. She suggests it might finally be Aika's turn to make an effort, before playfully interrupting the moment to ask for a sip of Aika's drink and trading beverages. The next morning, Kaede and Sajo sit at the breakfast table, where Kaede bluntly tells her brother that he looks grubby. Sajo dismisses the insult, but Kaede points to his hair, prompting Sajo to look in the mirror and realize his dyed hair has grown out into a noticeable two-tone look. Sajo jokes that black roots with brown hair might actually look stylish, but Kaede tells him it just makes him look unkempt, adding that lighter hair requires proper maintenance. She notes that he used to be much more concerned about his appearance, and Sajo agrees. As he walks to school, Sajo reflects on how he used to try his absolute best to become a man worthy of standing beside Aika. Now, however, he feels he no longer needs to worry so much, reasoning that he will not be standing by her side anyway. Upon entering the classroom, Sajo greets Aika with formal respect, calling her Natsukawa-san. Aika immediately asks why he is suddenly being so respectful, and Sajo jokingly asks if she expected him to act normal after her dramatic behavior the day before, calling her a goddess. He then greets both Aika and Kei normally, asking if they got home safely yesterday. Kei mentions that they enjoyed new fraps together, and Aika confirms it, while Sajo notes it sounds like they had fun. Aika teasingly remarks that it was nice and quiet without him around, and Kei agrees, calling it a proper girls-only gathering. At lunchtime, Sajo steps out of the classroom and notices that the usually occupied window seats are completely open. Deciding it must be his lucky day, he sits down with 2 snack bars and a pastry he bought at the convenience store, happily anticipating an over-nutritious meal. Suddenly, Rin Shinomiya calls out to him from an adjacent table, recognizing him from behind. Sajo flinches and tries to resume eating normally, but Rin tells him not to act natural, noting that normal people would ask to share the table first. Sajo hesitates, pointing out that sitting with a group of morals and discipline committee members sounds terrifying. Yu Yu Inatomi warmly invites Sajo to join them, and Rin agrees, forcing Sajo to sit down. Yu Yu inspects Sajo's lunch and scolds him for eating unhealthy convenience store food instead of proper meals. Surprised by how outspoken Yu Yu has become, Sajo wonders if she got a boyfriend. Hearing that, Rin forcefully pulls his ear, assuring him there is no way, while a wincing Sajo quickly apologizes. Yu Yu then introduces her childhood friend Aya, who sits beside her. Rin describes Aya as an excellent junior who helped raise Yu Yu to where she is today. After finishing their meals, Yu Yu and Aya depart, leaving Sajo alone with Rin. Rin explains that she sees Sajo as the benefactor who helped change Yu Yu. She explains that Yu Yu needed to realize that boys, whom she feared, actually possess good qualities, and Sajo's gentle, non-threatening words gave her the initial confidence to start climbing out of her shell. Sajo insists it was just a fluke, and says he will not approach her like that again, but Rin reassures him that it does not matter because a good thing already came of it. She tells Sajo to have confidence in himself, revealing that he also solved Rin's own troubles by prompting her to give Yu Yu an encouraging pat on the back. Rin then admits she was shocked to learn Sajo is Kaidi's younger brother, having known Kaidi since their first year when Kaidi dyed her hair blonde for a Gyaru debut. Rin recalls having a hard time dealing with Kaidi back then, and Sajo apologizes on his sister's behalf. Later, Sajo returns to the classroom area and spots Sasaki standing alone with a troubled expression. Asking if Sasaki is feeling unwell, Sajo steps aside with him to talk. Sasaki confesses that he has fallen for Aika. Sajo calmly responds that he will not object, noting that any guy in the world would fall for Aika. Sasaki asks about Sajo's own feelings, but Sajo explains that Aika is the one who decides who she likes, so he has no right to interfere. However, Sajo adds that he will treat Sasaki coldly from now on, comparing himself to a fan who gets jealous when their favorite pop idol suddenly gets a boyfriend. Sasaki stresses that he is seriously aiming for Aika, and they part ways. Sajo reflects on the conversation, acknowledging that Aika is his top recommendation, and that he always knew a rival would appear. He resolves not to think an unobtainable beauty like her could ever be with him, though he hopes she ends up with a top-tier guy, wondering if Sasaki is truly worthy while resolving to observe from the sidelines. When the school day ends, Sajo prepares to leave, only to be approached by Aika. Aika nervously claims she forgot something in the classroom. Noting that it is getting late, Sajo offers to walk back to the classroom with her, and Aika quietly agrees. Inside the empty classroom, Aika finds her missing item. Sajo asks if everything is fine, and Aika admits she also had business with him, having promised Kei that she would ask him a question before the day ended. She asks where he goes during lunch, and Sajo reveals he usually eats alone in the courtyard or cafeteria. Aika asks why he eats by himself instead of joining everyone, and Sajo mentions that today he ate with members of the Morals and Discipline Committee, specifically mentioning Shinomiya. Aika immediately becomes tense, questioning his relationship with Shinomiya. Sajo clarifies that they simply ran into each other, and that she is just an upperclassman and a friend of his sister. As an awkward atmosphere fills the room, Aika asks why he will not eat with her and their group like before. Internally, Sajo worries that staying around her will ruin her chance at a normal springtime of youth, thinking that supporting Sasaki might be for the best. Suddenly, his true feelings slip out as he blurts out that he definitely does not want that. Aika gasps in surprise, and a panicked Sajo quickly covers up his outburst by claiming he was talking about not wanting bad term-end exam results. As they walk out of the building together, Aika points at his roots and tells him to do something about his messy hair, noting that first impressions are important. Sajo agrees to stop by a drugstore on his way home and asks whether black or brown hair looks better on him. Aika says it depends on the person, so Sajo asks specifically what she prefers for him. Aika steps close to him, leaving Sajo flustered by her sudden proximity and sweet scent. Aika states she is fine with either color, but adds softly that if he had brown hair back when they first met, she might not have called out to him. Surprised by her reference to their past encounter, Sajo promises to go with whatever she likes, though a blushing Aika insists it is not about her preference. At the drugstore, Sajo finds that black dye is out of stock, so he settles for dark brown instead. Back home, he dyes his hair with Kaidi's help. Reflecting on recent events, Sajo considers how motivation serves as the driving force for human action, from children running outdoors to teenagers pursuing romantic passions. The first trimester final exam rankings are posted on the school bulletin board, and Sajo finds his name listed at 65th place, a significant drop from his 32nd place midterm ranking. He acknowledges that without his intense desire to keep up with Aika, his motivation to study has naturally waned. Sajo then checks the top of the board, seeing that Aika secured second place, up from 27th. Sajo realizes that keeping his distance really did allow Aika to focus and excel without his interference. Suddenly, Sasaki approaches Sajo, smugly showing off his 29th place ranking and asking if Sajo struggled with studying. Irritated by the handsome athlete taunting him, Sajo feels a sudden surge of competitive motivation spark within him, declaring that studying is his only weapon as an ordinary guy.